Hello and welcome to Mission to All Peoples. Today I'm going to be explaining to you and walking you through some ideas about how to become a missionary overseas. This is a huge question for a lot of folks. I have experience overseas as a full-time missionary. I almost went again with another mission agency. I have friends who are missionaries with different agencies and such, and I've seen the inner workings of it. And I want to give you some ideas, because I know that if you're not linked directly to a mission agency currently or have friends within one, you go onto internet search and you type in mission agencies and you're seeing hundreds of options, and it's just like overwhelming. What do you even do? What do you need to do? And unless you want to go to each mission agency individually to see what their requirements are, and usually they have them buried down there somewhere, it's a huge process. It's like call us, right? They don't want to just put the information out there. And I'm going to try to put the information out there, or at least give you the questions to ask, right? So I'm going to give you a few things that you need to be thinking about, questions you need to be asking, and give you a little general guidance on mission agencies. The first thing that you need to be thinking about as a potential missionary, maybe you're a seminary student, maybe you're a Bible college student, maybe you're a college student, maybe you've been in ministry for a while, or maybe you've been serving within your church for a while, and you're asking the question, is God calling me or us into missions? That's the first question. Is God calling you into missions? Because I've seen enough people have a private experience or a feeling that they believed was God that led them over to the mission field. And then when they got to the mission field and things got really hard, mysteriously enough, they had another private experience or a private feeling that God was calling them to go back home. This is problematic. One, because it's amazing how people have these convenient experiences that nobody can question. And two, they're not biblical, right? Biblically, how did Paul and Barnabas get called out? God spoke to the church while they were in a worship prayer meeting and said, set apart Paul and Barnabas to the work which I have for them, right? And the church came around Paul and Barnabas, laid hands on them, and sent them. This is the biblical model for how missionaries are sent, right? We have it even in that phrase, they are sent. They don't just go, okay? Now, if God has a ministry for you and, taking a job overseas or something like that, and you're not being sent as a missionary and you're just going to go, that's cool. That's great. But that's not what a missionary is. A missionary is one who is sent, right? And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about full-time employment or bivocational or something like that, where you're being supported by churches. And in that case, you need to go and get your faith community's response. Say, I think I'm being called to missions. Go to your pastor. Go to spiritual people in your life. Now, some of them may just say, no, that's crazy. Missions is crazy and dangerous, and you shouldn't do that. Because, they may have selfish reasons for that, or they may have bad experiences that they may not give you good advice, which is why you want to get advice from a bunch of people, right? But if a large number of people or a bunch of godly people in your life are saying, I just don't see that yet. Or maybe they point out specific things in your life that you need to work on. That can be really hard to hear, but maybe God's calling on your life to go into missions is for you to start preparing to go into missions. Paul took a long time from when he got saved before he was called out as a missionary. That was the Apostle Paul. I believe it was 14 years. That's just off the top of my head. But it's not inconceivable that God is asking you to enter into the process of becoming a missionary. And you need to have other people around you, the faith community around you, that is preparing you and is also preparing themselves to support sending you, okay? Now, there are some mission agencies out there that just want to get warm bodies on the field, and their idea is basically throw as much stuff against the wall and see what sticks. Unfortunately, they may take you and throw you up against the wall and see if you stick. If you're raising your own support, those mission agencies are more likely to do that. They don't really give the strong vetting as they should, because they'd rather you be on the field than not, regardless of who you're at. As long as you're not going to cause too much damage out there, they're going to send you. So just because a mission agency is saying, we believe you, we think you are called, we want you to send you, doesn't necessarily mean you should be listening to them, because they are kind of biased. They want to have 4,001 missionaries around the world instead of the 4,000 they currently have, right? So just understand that they are going to be trying to push you out there, and the big issue is going to be raising your financial support. The second thing that you should be thinking about is most mission agencies do have educational requirements, requiring some biblical and theological training. If it's a full-time paid position, those mission agencies tend to have higher standards educational-wise versus raise your own funds type mission agencies. Those are going to have usually lower, like maybe more just Bible school kind of standards. But if you're Christian Missionary Alliance, Assembly of God, or you're looking at the IMB with the Southern Baptist, right? You're going to be looking at higher educational requirements for that, because that's a full-time salaried position which they hire you on, and you don't go and raise support. Whereas, ABWE, Wycliffe, there's Pioneers, Frontiers. There's a bazillion of them out there that are going to have you raise your own support. New Tribes is another great one. Lots of great ones to look at. Each is going to have their own distinctives, but educational requirements are going to be a thing. Number 3 is you're going to want to consider, where are you being called to go? Now, if God's just calling you to go overseas in general, then you can start looking at a mission agency that really matches up with your skills, gifting, and calling, and then allow them to show you an area of need that they're trying to build a team for. And that's a great way to do it. One mistake that I really see a lot of people make is they go on one mission trip to someplace in Africa, or they go on multiple trips to a missions place for short-term missions like South America or Africa, because that's where their church youth group went. Their church has a relationship with an orphanage somewhere or something like that. And that's all of the world they know. That's all the mission work they've ever seen. And then when they get called into missions, that's the default place that they want to go. And that's the default place. That's the only place they're really actively considering. There are a lot of needs in the world. And if we're looking at missionaries being primarily church planters, going to where there is no church and starting churches there, or going to a place where the churches are very weak and helping train church leaders and doing evangelism there in unreached people groups, the places where you go on your short-term trips are probably not the places where we need full-time missionaries to go. Because short-term trips can go to Ecuador. They can go to places in Central America. They can go to even some places in Africa. They are relatively accessible. Where we need full-time missionaries are the places where short-term teams can't really go. Some dangerous places, some places where visas are harder to get. And those are the places where there is desperate, desperate need. Is your calling to take the gospel to the ends of the earth, or is it to do something that's going to make you feel better? That's an honest and hard question that I'm putting forward to you. Are you called to make yourself feel better, that make you feel like you're doing something, or is your calling to go take the gospel to the ends of the earth? I served in Central Asia for a number of years, and that's a difficult area. And we had few and far between missionaries out there. We needed more. We still need more. There are places where teams are covering 10 to 15 people groups. Not to say too much, my team was covering multiple people groups. My one team. We only had a few members. And that's what the reality is in some of these hard areas. Whereas you have other places where, dozens and dozens of short-term mission teams per year going to a certain people group. They have indigenous churches that are, 4 or 5% or more of the population, and then they have, 10 to 15 full-time missionaries too there. So where are you needed? Because where God is leading you is going to significantly impact what organizations you should be looking at. Certain organizations do not go to hard places when it's closed access or dangerous. You're going to have to select mission agencies that have a higher threshold of risk, right? Some mission agencies don't have any experience building platforms in closed countries, and they only send missionaries to open countries. Now, there's work to be done in some of these open countries, for sure, but there's also the majority of the remaining work among people groups of the world is among the closed countries. So that next thing I want to point out to you is you need to start watching your social media really, really close, because one, do you have stuff that's not edifying to Christ on there? That's just first off. Do you have stuff that's not edifying to Christ, that is not a good testimony in the first place? Two, if you're looking at the possibility of going to a closed access country, you need to start deleting your social media stuff now. You need to delete a whole bunch of stuff. You need to get some advice on what that looks like, how to purge. Now, what you delete off the internet is never truly gone. So you need to also categorize what you've actually said online, okay? Because some of that may possibly disqualify you from working in certain areas. And just because you delete it off your social media doesn't mean it's gone. It's still backed up on servers around the world, including possibly in some of those closed countries that you're trying to get into. You may find that you just won't be able to get a visa because they know what you're doing. If you're looking at going to a closed access country, do not post on your media that you're looking and you're talking to mission agencies, okay? Keep that one a little closer to your vest, because if you do end up going to a closed access country, you don't want to be tied directly to a mission agency. All right. Next step, you need to research the mission agencies that you're looking at. One, if you're already connected, your church is already connected to mission agency, that's great. Maybe that's the best way to go. You might want to look at what type of mission agency it is and see if there are alternate mission agencies that you should be actively considering. Here's some different differentiations of mission agencies, okay? First differentiation is you're going to have your theological spectrum, right? You got your charismatic and non-charismatic spectrum. Where do you land on that? Because you're going to want to be with a mission agency that is in line with your theological beliefs. If you're very charismatic in giftings and all that, you're not going to want to go with a mission agency that's all the way over here. It's going to be difficult with you, and they're going to have a difficult time with you, right? They may actually just say no to you, but they may drag you on along the process for quite a while before they say no, or they may actually send you over to the field, and you may have a lot of problems on the field because you have a differing perspective and a differing idea of ministry than the people that you're working with. So theological perspectives, whether you're more Calvinistic and Arminian, look at that perspective a little bit. Whether you're a little more Reformed, look at the organizations you're with. I don't know who's all watching my channel right now, whether you're much more focused on conservative biblical understanding of Christianity or whether you're more on the liberal side. Because there are mission agencies that are on the more liberal side, and if you're a conservative Bible-believing Christian, you may get into something like that, but you may find out once you get there that the people around you don't believe like you do, and they're not doing ministry like you do, like you think ought to be done, right? Also, if you're on the more liberal side, you're going to probably not get accepted to a conservative mission agency, right? So theological spectrums, you need to take that into consideration. And that's going to also play into the denominational differentiation, right? If you're not a member of a certain denomination, that's going to rule out certain mission sending agencies, right? Particularly the full-time salaried ones, like Southern Baptist International Mission Board. You need to be a Southern Baptist for that. Same thing with Assemblies of God. Same thing with Christian Missionary Alliance. You need to be part of one of those sending churches. You need to have been a member there for a period of time, and otherwise you're just not going to be able to go with them. So then there's the mission agencies that aren't tied directly to a denomination, but they may be loosely tied to a denomination, and that's going to really influence their theological perspectives on things, and also it may be easier if you're part of member churches and churches that support the mission agency to get into that mission agency. If your church is already supporting and active in that missions organization, it's going to be easier for you to get in. That's just the way it is. If you're coming from a church that supports someone else, it may be a little more difficult, right? Next thing, beyond denominational differences, is you're going to have this risk assessment, risk tolerance. And some mission agencies, they will throw you out there holding onto a fishing line, and that's your only thread of support. And you're going to have to figure things out. You're going to have to manage your own risk on the field. They have a very high comfort level with you taking big risks for the kingdom of God. And if that's the case, you need to make sure that you're ready for that. Now, those organizations that work with that, like Pioneers and Frontiers and such like that, they are very good at what they do. But you need to be someone who's ready and willing to be surrounded by people who are going to hear that there is a danger, and they're going to say, we're going to stay on the field. Or you need to have the courage to say, I'm not comfortable with this, and I need to go out of country until this dies down. Because other organizations like New Tribes, like ABWE, from what I understand, I don't know them quite so well, but there's a lot of other organizations that they won't touch dangerous zones with a 10-foot pole. And you need to, if you're going to go to a dangerous area, if you want to not be pulled out at the first sign of trouble, you need to think about who you're with. Also, organizations that are more focused on risk-prone areas and have a higher level dealing with risk, they also have more experience dealing with hostage situations, working in places where the situation is rapidly devolving and they're trying to gauge the risk, because it's not always clear how high the risk level is, right? And is it going to get better next year? Who knows? Maybe it's going to get worse next year. So maybe now is the best time to be reaching these people and taking those risks now, and then when things get worse, pulling people out. So you need to just be thinking through that. That's a conversation you need to have. If you're talking to a recruiter, make sure you're very open and honest about your understanding and comfort level with risk. And then also, where in the world do these organizations work, right? Going back to risk, just a little bit, like New Tribes, they will send you out into the jungle of an open country, but that may be actually more dangerous than working in a closed access country, right? But like New Tribes, they don't really work in closed countries, right? So if you're being called to a closed country or to work with unreached people groups in hard areas, you need to seriously consider where an agency can send you. Now, some mission agencies, if you say, I want to go to Iran, or I want to go to Turkey, or I want to go to Pakistan, or some of these other places, right? If they don't have experience working in that area, they don't have a team already working in that area, or very similar countries, they may actually say, well, we've been wanting to move into that country or move into those areas. We've been waiting to build a team for that. This may work for you, but caution. They may be thinking in the next 5 to 10 years, and they may not be flexible enough to do the things that are necessary to get you into those certain countries, okay? If they don't have the experience to go in there, and you're looking at getting out in the field in the very near future, that may not be the best way to go. You may want to go with a mission organization that has experience in that area, that has established teams, that understands the visa procedures, understands how the platforms work and the political things that are going on in that country. You may want to really go with a mission organization that already has an established presence in that country. It's faster to get out there, plus you as a new missionary are going to need to learn a lot. And it's a lot easier to learn from someone who already knows the stuff than for you to go into a closed access country and try to figure it all out yourself. Because it's really difficult, and you will most likely go into a closed access country and make so many mistakes that you may get blacklisted relatively quickly, and you may not ever be able to go back in. And all you're going to be able to do is train other people that are going to come after you to not make the same mistakes you have. And that's the reality of things. We don't hear that. There's a closed access country that I worked in, and one of the things that they would do is a Muslim country. The local imam would pick someone out, and they would go to the new worker in the area and ask them, for a Bible. If you're a new missionary, you kind of be like, yeah, sure. Here's a Bible. This is so great. I'm only here 1 week, and someone's already asking me for a Bible because they want to know about Jesus. No, that's not what's happening. What they're doing is they're testing to see if you are a nonprofit worker or a business person, or if you are a Christian. Because if you give them the Bible, you've already been blacklisted. They start watching you, and they will make sure that you never, ever, ever have a meaningful conversation with anyone without supervision. Your career as a missionary there has just ended because you made that mistake. But if you were a new person walking into the area, you wouldn't know that. But if you're with experienced missionaries, they're going to say, listen, if this happens, this is what you need to do. Because otherwise, you're going to be back on a boat going home pretty soon, because you won't be able to do anything here. So experience, those organizations that have experience is just huge, right? The next thing is, if they have an established team, or if they have experience sending to that area, you're going to want to know information about that team. And as you go through the process with them, you're going to need to find out about that team. If you can meet with team leaders, if you can meet with team members before you get to the field, that is highly, highly advised. All right, so you have your mission agencies that are fully supported, where they pay you a salary basically, and you don't raise support. There's organizations where you need to go and raise your own support. Then there's also some more hybrid options starting to develop, where they help you get a job out there, and then you raise part of your support. Okay, that's another option. So hopefully I've started to point you in the right direction. We're going to have some more videos coming out. I'm going to start talking about some mission agencies that are specifically, I'm going to give you my insight and my reviews of the mission agencies that hopefully give you an overview where you can at least start crossing some mission agencies off your list, or maybe to add those mission agencies as potentials for you to look at. All right? I am so excited that you are considering being a missionary overseas, and I pray to God that He speaks clearly to you and to your church community in this process. And may you give glory to God, whether you go be a missionary overseas or whether God calls you to stay here and support missionaries in other places and continue to do the gospel work where you are. God bless you, and have a great day.